Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be making a spring pea risotto. It's creamy, it's delicious, so let's get started. So quickly before we get started, I do want to give a couple tips for risotto. Risotto can be a little bit finicky, so I think it could be useful. First, you want to use warm stock and then gradually add that. It just helps with the overall cooking process of the rice. Then you want to make sure that you toast your rice until it is translucent. This actually helps the rice keep its shape while releasing plenty of starch for a creamy texture. Next, you want to make sure you're stirring enough, but not constantly. You don't have to stir non-stop, just about every 20 to 30 seconds, and this will give you that creamy consistency while allowing the rice to cook evenly. Next, you want to make sure you cook the rice al dente. The rice should be tender with just a slight bite in the center. This usually takes about 18 to 20 minutes depending on the type of rice. You also want to go the extra mile and use freshly grated Parmesan rather than pre-shredded. It's going to give you the smoothest texture. And my final tip is actually to add any delicate vegetables like peas or spinach or any herbs near the end so they stay bright and fresh. Okay, so first things first, you want to get your ingredients ready because if there's anything about risotto, it kind of goes fast. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get a pot of water boiling for my peas because we do want to blanch those. And then I want to get 4 cups of chicken stock or chicken broth, whatever you're using, or vegetable broth, warming up on the stove because you do want to add it warm. And the reason you want to add it warm is so that your rice will cook evenly. You don't want to be adding cold liquid to your warming rice because you do add it slowly, like a half a cup at a time. I'm just going to put that on low. You don't want it hot, you just want it warm. I've also got an ice bath ready so that we can put the peas directly from the boiling water into the ice bath because we want them to keep that great green color. Okay, my water's boiling, so I'm gonna pour in a heaping 1.5 cups of frozen peas. Let that cook for 1 to 2 minutes. Then I'm going to drain them. And then I'm going to immediately submerge them into the ice water, stopping the cooking and keeping them this beautiful green color. So I'm only gonna have them in here about 30 seconds and then I'm gonna pull them back out and set them to the side. The next thing I wanna prepare is actually the onion and the garlic. Now this recipe actually calls for a shallot. I don't have a shallot, so I'm just going to use one of my mom's purple onions from her garden. And if you have seen any of my videos, you know I don't love onion. So I actually puree my onions. It's just because I don't like the texture. It's just how I am. And excuse the background noise, there's a lot of us moving around right now, but it calls for 2 cloves of garlic. I have small ones, so I'm doing 4, and then this is going to be the equivalent of my shallot. Perfect texture, great for adults who don't like onions, or a kid who you're trying to hide some veggies. At this point, I wanted to make sure my chicken was ready to go, so as soon as the risotto was finished, we could just top it and serve. We cooked the chicken on the Blackstone after cutting it into bite-sized pieces and marinating it in Greek dressing. While we were at it, we also threw some asparagus on the Blackstone to grill alongside it. Okay, now that we have everything kind of prepared and ready, we can go ahead and start the risotto. So I'm gonna put it on medium-low heat and go ahead and start melting the butter in a non-stick. I like enamel cast iron to do risotto. I think it holds the heat really well. Okay, you can see that the butter is actually bubbling just a little bit, so it's perfectly ready to saute, and we're just going to put in the onions and the garlic. And all you want to do is just let this kind of toast up a little bit so that it will release all those flavors. I actually heard someone say if you saute onions and garlic and butter, that will make people hungry because it smells so good. I don't know if that's true, but it does smell great. Okay, next you want to actually toast your rice, and this is just a tip. You don't have to technically do it, but you want to toast it till it's translucent. I'm not sure what happened, but my audio kind of messed up here. But basically, the risotto, when you toast it, it's going to create a barrier so that the starch releases slower. This just helps the rice keep its shape and not stick together and become a mess. And it just gives it a little extra, I don't know, taste when you toast it like this. But you do want to toast it till it's translucent, about 1 to 2 minutes. So this is good and translucent. It's been cooking for about 2 minutes. So next you want to deglaze your pan with a little bit of white wine.
If you don't want to use white wine, you can always use a little bit of chicken stock, but you really want to get those brown bits off. Also, make sure you cook out the alcohol because it can have a strong taste if you don't. So now that this has been cooking for a minute and all the alcohol is cooked off, you're going to want to ladle in some of this warm stock, about half a cup at a time. Now it's important to mix your risotto, but you don't want to over mix it either. So every 20-30 seconds you want to stir it.
Now this recipe did call for fresh thyme, but I didn't have any on hand, so I just used some dried thyme from the pantry. It still turned out so great. The biggest tip I can give you for making risotto is to add your stock a little at a time, about half a cup at a time actually. Stir it until the liquid is almost completely absorbed, and then you'll add another half a cup and just repeat. That really is the secret to a creamy risotto. You're simply adding stock, stirring, letting it cook down, and repeating until the rice is perfectly cooked. I did season mine with a little bit of salt and pepper along the way, but be careful not to overdo the salt since we will be adding some Parmesan later. It's always easier to add more seasoning at the end than it is to take it away. While the risotto was cooking, I grated some fresh Parmesan. I definitely recommend using fresh grated instead of the pre-shredded because it melts so much better and gives the risotto a much creamier texture. Another important tip is not to overcook the rice. You want it to be al dente, just a slight bite in the center. That little bit of texture is what makes a great risotto. Once the rice was finished, I started stirring in the Parmesan just a little at a time, tasting as I went. I ended up adding a little bit more salt and a little bit more pepper and then a squeeze of fresh lemon juice, which really brightened everything up. I also decided to add a bit more Parmesan, but I didn't want it to become overly cheesy, so I just kept tasting it until it exactly was where I wanted it to be. Like I said earlier, I always think it's important to make sure that you're tasting and adding seasoning as you go and not just adding everything at the beginning and run the risk of over seasoning. Now this is the point in which I stirred in the peas. I like adding them right at the end so they stay bright, sweet, and slightly crisp instead of becoming mushy during the cooking process. I did go ahead and add the rest of the Parmesan. I just felt like it needed a little bit more. Like I said, just taste as you go and do what you want. At that point, the risotto was finished, and it turned out exactly how I like it. Rich, creamy, and full of texture from the al dente rice and the fresh peas. It paired perfectly with the grilled chicken that was slightly charred by the flavor of the Blackstone. The only thing that I can think of that may have made this even better would have been a drizzle of balsamic glaze. I absolutely love balsamic glaze with risotto, but we didn't have it on hand, and honestly, it was still absolutely delicious. I finished everything with just a little extra fresh Parmesan and served it alongside the grilled chicken and asparagus. If you decide to try this recipe, I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, thanks, bye.